I was 65 when my mother looked me in the eye and told me, "You've faked being sick long enough. Pack your things. I want you gone by tonight." It wasn't the first time she'd said something cruel, but it was the first time she said it while holding open the door with one hand and gripping my pill bottle with the other, as if daring me to say she was wrong. I didn't. I just nodded, grabbed the small bag I kept by the bed, and walked out. My hands were trembling from fatigue, and my legs barely held up under me. But I didn't let her see. The last thing I wanted was to give her one more thing to use against me. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from, and if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. I had been back living in that house for almost a year, after decades of struggling with chronic illness, of bouncing between small jobs, cheap apartments, and a lifetime of pretending I wasn't constantly in pain. I'd come back out of necessity. My disability checks barely covered rent, and my body wasn't cooperating anymore. So I moved back into the small bedroom I once shared with my sister when we were kids, convinced myself that it was temporary. A stopgap, a pause, but I should have known better. My mother never forgave weakness, real or imagined, and in her eyes, I had always been the weak one, the one who gave up, the one who let herself go, the one who lived off pity. She used to say those things to me when I was 19. She was still saying them now. I walked out into the cold evening without knowing where I was going. I ended up sitting at the bus stop at the end of our street, not even bothering to check the schedule. My left hand was numb again. I could barely grip the zipper on my coat. I pressed my fingers together, waiting for some feeling to return. I told myself I wasn't going to cry, and I didn't. Not that night. I called an old neighbor, Mrs. Connolly, a widow who'd known me since I was little. She let me stay in her spare bedroom just for a few days, she said. I didn't argue. I was too exhausted to argue. She handed me a blanket and a hot cup of tea and said nothing. That silence felt kinder than any words could have been. I didn't hear from my mother the next day, or the day after. But someone knocked on Mrs. Connolly's door 3 days later. It was my younger brother, Michael. Michael's 40 now. He's the youngest of us, 12 years younger than me, and had always been the quiet one, the observer, the fixer. He still lives on the back property, in the small unit that used to be our father's workshop. He built it out himself back when he was still trying to get sober. He stayed there after our dad passed, and over time, my mother came to rely on him. He kept the plumbing running, did the groceries, handled her prescriptions when she remembered to take them. When I opened the door and saw him there, holding a cardboard box with both hands, he didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me like he hadn't really believed I'd answer. I moved aside and he walked in. She shouldn't have done that, he said finally, setting the box down on the small kitchen table. I'm not surprised she did, I replied. My voice was steady, my body wasn't. He sat down and rubbed the back of his neck. I should have said something. That night, I froze. I didn't blame him. We'd all been raised to stay quiet, to pretend. What's in the box? I asked, motioning toward it. He pushed it closer to me. It's from the attic. I've been going through stuff since Dad died. I found these a few months ago and didn't know what to do with them. Letters, photos, some of Dad's notes, stuff Mom wrote, old things. I opened it slowly. Inside were dozens of yellowed envelopes, old photographs, handwritten pages, some folded neatly, others shoved in like they were hidden in a hurry. One envelope had my name on it. Another had a return address from a psychiatric facility 2 counties over. There were pages from journals, my mother's handwriting unmistakable, riddled with frantic, angry scribbles. I picked up one note, dated 1982. Eleanor manipulates with silence, it read. She fakes fatigue. She sulks for attention. She's not sick. She's selfish. Another from my father's notebook. Martha refuses to acknowledge Eleanor's diagnosis. There were scratch marks near the doorframe, like someone had tried to force it open at some point. I went to the kitchen last. On the fridge was a photograph of me, a recent one, Probably taken from the newspaper article about the hearing. It was taped crookedly and had no caption, no marker, no damage, just my face. I took it down and put it in my coat pocket. Then I walked outside, locked the door behind me, and left. I didn't know what I was going to do with the house. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to live in it. That place had never been a home. It was just a building where things happened to me. The ownership didn't change what had happened inside it, but it did change what could happen next. Met with Tanya one last time and had her help me create a transfer clause. In the event of my death, my third of the property would pass directly to Michael. No probate, no disputes. He tried to argue, but I insisted. You stood by me, I said. You came back. A week later, he returned with a plain cardboard box. Inside it were the last two items he found in the attic. The first was a folded piece of paper, written by our father. It read, "If Eleanor ever reads this, I hope she knows I saw more than I ever said. I tried to manage the damage, but I failed to protect you. I'm sorry." I held it in my hands for a long time. The second item was a bracelet. My bracelet. I hadn't seen it in over 40 years. It was a simple silver chain with my initials, engraved on a small charm. She kept it in a locked drawer, Michael said. I think she took it when you left. I put it on without speaking. That night, I went home and opened a new document on my computer. I wrote a letter. Not to her, not to the courts, not to the past. To myself. A record of what happened. A record of what I rebuilt. A record of what I reclaimed without anyone's permission. When I finished, I saved it in the same folder with the files, the scans, the letters, and the photos. Then I backed it up on a flash drive and stored it with the deed. A few weeks later, I planted flowers in a rectangular pot outside my apartment window. Marigolds and lavender. Nothing fancy. Just something alive. Michael came by and watered them while I rested. You should come to dinner Sunday, I said. Yeah, he said. I will. He paused. You did it, you know. Did what? Got your life back. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some victories don't come with applause. They come with silence and peace. She was sitting on the couch in the living room, watching the news with the volume turned all the way up. When she saw me, she didn't move. So, she said, you've come to gloat. No, I said. I came to make something clear. She turned the volume down one notch. I'm not here to hurt you, I said. I'm not here to fight, but I am here to take back what's mine, and I won't apologize for that. She didn't speak. For years, I let you tell everyone I was unstable, that I was weak, that I didn't belong, and I believed it. I lost years of my life trying to be good enough for you to stop. Still, nothing. I'm not asking you to. Understand. I'm not asking you to admit anything, but you don't get to keep the lie. Not anymore. Her hands trembled. She stared at the television. You always wanted to destroy this family. No, I said. You did that on your own. I turned and walked out. The hearing was brief. She didn't attend. Her lawyer read a short statement, then quietly acknowledged the document inconsistencies. The judge ruled in my favor. The deed was invalid. I now legally owned a third of the house. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. That night, I sat by my apartment window and looked down at the quiet street. No one knew what had just happened. No one cared. And that was exactly how I wanted it. After the hearing, I didn't contact my mother. I didn't send a letter, didn't show up at the house, didn't answer when her lawyer called twice the following week. I had no message left to deliver. She knew what she had done. And even if she never said the words, the consequences had finally landed at her feet. The judgment gave me legal rights to a third of the house, not sentimental rights, not recognition, just something measurable. On paper, I now owned a share of the place I had once been thrown out of. Michael came to see me the day the documents arrived. They're final, he said, handing me the certified copy of the ruling. Your name's officially back on the bar title. I looked at it for a long time without saying anything. Do you want to sell it? He asked. You don't have to decide now. I don't want anything from her, I said. But I want this. Not because I need the money. Not even because I want justice. I just want to own something she tried to erase. He nodded. Then keep it. Leave it empty. Rent it. Burn it down for all I care. I'll keep it, I said. A few days later, Michael told her. He said she didn't react. She sat in silence for 10 minutes, then asked him to take the batteries out of the smoke alarm because it was recording her. He didn't argue. Her decline was moving faster now. The confusion was more frequent, the paranoia sharper. She accused him of stealing the cutlery, of moving her shoes, of turning the heat up to suffocate her. She barely slept. She left the stove on. She started putting canned food under the mattress. He called Dr. Klein again. She needs full-time care, the doctor said. Preferably in a facility with memory supervision. This won't get better. Michael looked at me across the small kitchen table in my apartment. She won't go, he said. She screams when I mention it. I called a state caseworker. They're going to do an evaluation. Do you want me to come? I asked. He shook his head. She still says your name like it's a weapon. I think it's better if you stay away. So I did. The state caseworker came 2 weeks later. After a brief evaluation, they began the process for an emergency conservatorship. Michael was offered the choice to assume it. He declined. I can't do this, he told me. I've carried her long enough. She was transferred to a care facility 30 miles outside of town. Michael didn't visit. I didn't ask to know the name. I never saw her again. A month later, I went to the house. I had the key, the deed, and a folded letter in my pocket. The last one she ever sent me. I hadn't opened it. I wasn't going to. The front door was stiff, but I pushed it open. The air smelled like old rugs and mildew. The living room was dark. She had covered the windows with bed sheets, and the television was still tuned to a static channel. I turned it off. I walked through the house slowly. Everything was smaller than I remembered. The hallway seemed narrower, the walls more faded. I looked into my old bedroom, now empty, stripped of anything that hinted I'd ever lived there. The carpet was stained. Every moment she didn't control. She'd pretend I didn't exist, and for most of my life I accepted that. I learned how to shrink to fit her expectations. I disappeared on command. But now, I wasn't shrinking. I was still here. And she hated that. 2 months after I moved into the new place, I got a call from Tanya. The probate office finished the review, she said. And there's enough. Enough for what? To move forward, she said. The signature on the 2004 quitclaim deed doesn't match your verified samples. The notary filed a correction in 2006, but your name was never included in the tie. Notice, that's not just sloppy, it's illegal. What does that mean? It means you still have legal rights to a portion of the property, she said. If we file a petition and request a quiet title action, it could force a reassessment. I didn't say anything right away. I'd spent most of my life trying to stay invisible, to avoid making noise. The idea of taking legal action, not to punish my mother, but to recover something that had been taken from me, felt unreal. You don't have to decide now, Tanya added. But the door's open. We can proceed if you want. I thanked her and told her I needed time to think. Later that day, Michael came by with a grocery bag and a tired look. She's worse, he said without waiting for me to ask. What do you mean? She's forgetting things, he said. Not just names or dates. She burned a pot of soup last week and told the fire department it was my fault. She called the police yesterday and said someone had stolen her mailbox. Has she seen a doctor? She won't go. She says it's all part of my plan to lock her away and steal her house. Do you believe she's declining? He nodded. I think she's always been like this. But now it's not controlled. It's breaking down. I didn't say anything. She asked about you yesterday, Michael added. Said you were probably hiding somewhere waiting to come back and punish her. Then she asked me why you weren't dead yet. It wasn't shocking, not anymore. But it still hit in the chest, like a dull thud. I'm going to file the petition, I said. He looked at me. You sure? Yes, I said. I'm done protecting her version of things. That night, I sat at my desk and went through the materials again. I prepared a summary of the forged deed, the mismatched signatures, the letters she'd sent, and the photos. I scanned the 1992 picture again, the one where she circled my face in red ink and wrote, "Liar." I included that too. Tanya filed the petition on a Thursday morning. It took 3 weeks for the notice to reach my mother. Michael called me the day she got it. She screamed for 2 hours, he said. Said you were coming to steal her life. Then she locked herself in her bedroom and refused to eat. I didn't do this to punish her, I said. I know, he replied. But she won't see it that way. Another week passed, then 2. Then one morning, Michael showed up unannounced. She collapsed in the kitchen, he said. I found her on the floor, dehydrated, confused. She didn't recognize me for a minute. Is she in the hospital? She refused to go. I called Dr. Klein, the one who saw Dad. He came by, did a few checks, said she's declining fast. Michael sat at the table, rubbing his hands together. He looked thinner. I think it's dementia, he said. But I also think it's just her. She's always been this way. Now she can't keep it together anymore. What are you going to do? I don't know, he said. She won't accept a caregiver. She won't move in with me. She doesn't want help, just control. She never wanted help, I said. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Not from my mother, but from her lawyer. It was a notice of contestation. She was disputing the petition, calling it a coordinated attack by a mentally unstable daughter with a long history of deception and hostility. Tanya called me the same day. She's not going to win, she said. There's too much evidence, but be prepared. This might get loud. I wasn't afraid of loud anymore. 2 weeks before the hearing, I went to the house. Michael was there, waiting. She doesn't know you're coming, he said. I didn't tell her. I'm not here to argue, I said. We walked up the steps together. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The front yard was overgrown. The porch sagged slightly. The door stuck before it opened. The way she told everyone I'd abandoned the family when she was the one who locked the doors. What would I even do with it? I asked. Whatever you want, he said. Sell it. Rent it. Use it. I don't want to live there. I know. We sat in silence. I finally said, I'll call Tanya. That week, I authorized Tanya to request a full copy of the will from probate records and submit an inquiry into the property transfer. She warned me that it might not go anywhere, that the statute of limitations was complicated. But she also said that the forged deed and the altered documents could be challenged. I wasn't expecting results. I just wanted it on record. Meanwhile, my mother kept calling Michael. He didn't pick up. Then she started sending letters, handwritten, rambling, increasingly unhinged. In one, she accused me of brainwashing him. In another, she wrote, I gave you life. You owe me everything. She mailed it to Mrs. Connolly's house, addressed to the ungrateful one. I didn't open it. Michael read it first and shredded it. She's unraveling, he said. She's been unraveling for 40 years, I said. We just never said it out loud. That weekend, Michael helped me pack the rest of my belongings into boxes. I'd been living at Mrs. Connolly's for over a month, and it was time to move into my own place. A small apartment had opened up above the corner bookstore on Main. The rent was low, the stairs were manageable, and the windows faced west. I put the deposit down already, Michael said. It's in your name. I covered the first month. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. We moved everything in one afternoon. The space was small, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, but it was clean and quiet. The landlord, Mr. Ramos, lived downstairs and offered to install a handrail in the bathroom when he saw me limping. On the first night in the new place, I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes and cried for 20 minutes, not because I was sad, but because for the first time in decades, I had 4 walls that belonged only to me. I slept through the night. 3 days later, Tanya called. I heard back from the probate office, she said. Your father's will was contested in 2004, shortly after he passed. There's no record of that hearing, but the property transfer occurred 6 weeks after the filing. We're looking into it. I'm not expecting anything, I said. That's fine, she said. But you deserve to know the full story, even if the outcome doesn't change. That same afternoon, I received another envelope from my mother. This one had no letter. Just a photo. It was from 1992, taken at a church event. I was sitting at a table, smiling. Someone, my mother, had circled my face in red ink and written the word liar across my forehead. Michael found it in the mailbox and handed it to me carefully. I'm done, I said. I'll block her number, he said. No, I'm done reading anything she sends. He nodded. That night, I took every remaining letter from her, every photo she had altered, every insult she had written, and placed them in a sealed envelope. I labeled it, Martha Keller, Retained Evidence. Then I put it in the back of the top shelf in my closet. It wasn't forgiveness. And it wasn't revenge. It was a boundary. And for the first time in my life, it was mine. The apartment above the bookstore became a sanctuary faster than I expected. I kept the furniture simple, just a secondhand sofa, a small dining table, a proper mattress for the first time in years, and a desk in the corner where I set up the files. Every night I sat by the window and watched the street below go dark slowly. For the first time in a long time, no one knocked on my door, no one banged pots in the kitchen, and no one accused me of faking a pain they never bothered to understand. I saw Michael once or twice a week. He came by with groceries or repairs. He insisted on doing, tightening a wobbly chair leg, fixing the bathroom mirror, checking on the space heater. He didn't ask for anything in return. We talked more now than we had in decades. Most of it wasn't about the past. Just weather. Bills, small talk. But it was something steady. My mother, on the other hand, had gone quiet. No more letters, no phone calls, no notes in the mailbox. I figured she had shifted into her final strategy. Erasure. It wasn't new. That's what she'd done when I first left home in my 20s. That's what she did after every argument. She's trying to rewrite the story again. Michael nodded. I told her to stop. I told her I've seen the truth. She cried. Then she yelled. Then she hung up. She's never going to see herself as wrong, I said. That's not the kind of person she is. I know. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photo. This was taped to the inside of her medicine cabinet. It was another picture of me. This one from my high school graduation. I was wearing a borrowed cap and gown. She had drawn a red X through my face with a marker. She's been holding on to this stuff for decades, Michael said. I don't think she hates you because you're sick. I think she hates you because you survived being what she couldn't control. I didn't answer. There was nothing else to say. After he left, I sat alone at the table for a long time. I took the photo with the red X and scanned it into my folder. I added a new section, Character Evidence, Martha Keller. Then I logged everything into a spreadsheet. I noted the dates, the handwriting samples, the pattern of behavior. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger. It was reclamation. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone write over me. The first time I stood up for myself in front of my mother, I was 31 years old. I had been working part-time at the library back then, doing clerical work and helping patrons with their printing cards. I'd just started a new round of tests for what would later be diagnosed as systemic lupus. The fatigue was unbearable most days, and on one particular Saturday I came home early and lay down on the couch with an ice pack on my neck. She walked in and turned off the ceiling fan. "You're not sick," she said. "You're just lazy." I sat up and said very quietly, "Stop saying that." She didn't even flinch. "I'll stop when it's no longer true." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood, walked past her, and went to my room. That was the full extent of my rebellion. And yet, it was the moment she started treating me like a threat. Now, 34 years later, I was finally putting the pieces of that pattern into something solid. I wasn't planning to confront her again. I didn't need another scene. I didn't want an apology. I wanted distance. Clean, deliberate, protected distance. The affidavit Tanya helped me record was done over video. She guided me through each section: background, history, specific incidents, supporting documents. I read aloud parts of the letters and described the photo alterations, the accusations, the forced hospitalization attempts. The most difficult part was saying the sentence I had never said out loud to anyone, not even to myself. My mother, emotionally, abused me for over 50 years, and no one stopped her because no one wanted to see it. When I said it, I didn't cry. But after the recording ended and Tanya thanked me for my courage, I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for nearly an hour. I kept my hands on the table, pressed flat against the surface, trying to keep the room from spinning. Michael came, by that afternoon, carrying a folder with receipts and paperwork. "I've been thinking," he said. "You should talk to someone about the house." "The house is hers," I said. "Dad left a third of it to you in the will," Michael replied. "But she forged a quitclaim deed 20 years ago. You signed it, remember?" I frowned. "I signed a lot of things. I didn't know what they were." "She told you it was about medical insurance," he said. "I found the original. She changed the filing dates after the notary stamp. It's sloppy. You kept that?" He nodded. "I've been holding on to it since Dad died." I took the folder and opened it slowly. Inside was a scanned copy of the document with my signature at the bottom. Next to it was a receipt from the courthouse with a filing date 2 months after. "The signature." "She altered it," I said. "She was worried you'd come back and claim your part of the property," he said. "She always said you'd try to take what wasn't yours." "What was mine?" I corrected. Michael looked at me. "You have a legal right to 1/3. You always did." I leaned back in the chair. I wasn't thinking about money. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about the room at the back of the house that used to be mine. The way she moved my things out while I was in the hospital. The way she refused to answer my calls when I needed to come home after I lost my job at 49. I sat at the small table in the corner of Mrs. Connolly's guest room with the scanned documents laid out in front of me. I had a cheap secondhand laptop open and a notepad next to it. I didn't know what exactly I was building, but I had the sense that I was finally putting together something that was mine, something complete, something I could point to and say, "This happened." I organized the contents into folders: letters from Dad, notebooks, Martha K., altered photos, external, witnesses, and a final folder labeled institutional attempts. That one included paperwork from when I was nearly committed at 19, and a handwritten note from my mother stating, "Eleanor refuses to cooperate. I fear she's becoming violent." I had never, not once, lifted a hand to anyone in my family. Reading her words still made me feel nauseous. That evening, I called a legal aid clinic I found online. I didn't have any illusions of a lawsuit or courtroom resolution. I knew how the system worked. I was 65. My mother was in her 80s. There was no jury waiting to hear my story, but I also knew that documenting this mattered. Legally, historically, personally. I wanted it recorded. A woman named Tanya returned my call the next morning. "I reviewed the intake form," she said. Her voice was calm and steady, not condescending or overly sympathetic. "I'd like to set up a video call with you so we can go over a few things, if that's okay." "It is," I said, surprising myself by how calm I sounded. We scheduled for Thursday afternoon. When the time came, I positioned the laptop on a couple of stacked books to elevate the webcam and sat down with everything in reach. Tanya appeared. On screen, a woman in her early 40s with a serious face and practical haircut. She didn't smile, but she didn't need to. "Do you have the materials you mentioned?" she asked. "I do," I said. "There's quite a bit." "I have time," she replied. I started with the letters. I explained who Michael was, how he had found the box in the attic, how he'd delivered it to me after my mother forced me out of the house. I showed her the notebooks, the notes accusing me of lying, faking, manipulating, the altered photographs, the psychiatric paperwork with my name spelled out in bold letters, and my mother's writing calling me a danger to the household. Tanya didn't interrupt. She took notes quietly, asking for clarification only once or twice. After an hour, she said, "Ms. Keller, I want to be honest with you. In terms of legal action, there's not much we can pursue that would yield a meaningful outcome. The statute of limitations has passed on most of the possible claims. Your mother's current mental state would make things complicated. But," she paused, "that doesn't mean your story doesn't matter. What you've documented here, this is abuse, psychological, emotional, medical neglect. You were isolated, gaslit, and manipulated for decades. That deserves to be recorded. You have every right to make sure this isn't buried." "I'm not trying to punish her," I said. "I'm trying to reclaim myself." Tanya nodded. "There are advocacy groups I can connect you with. We can also record an affidavit just to have your voice attached to the documentation. That way, if anything ever comes up, inheritance disputes, future caregiving issues, hospital records, you'll have a protected narrative." "I'd like that," I said. We talked another 40 minutes. When we ended the call, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not hope. That wasn't the right word, but something like weight redistribution, the kind of shift that doesn't make the load disappear, but makes it bearable. That night, Michael came by again. He brought me groceries, eggs, bread, soup cans, a small bouquet of daisies he didn't mention, but placed quietly in a water glass on the windowsill. I thought, "Maybe you'd want these," he said. We ate dinner at the small table. I told him about the call with the legal aid clinic, about Tanya, about the affidavit. He listened. When I was finished, he said, "I'm proud of you." It hit me harder than I expected. No one had ever said that to me before. Not once. Not in 65 years. I cleared my throat and reached for my tea. "You know," he said, "she's trying to call me now. Mom. Every day." "Of course she is," I said. "She says you're poisoning me. Says you've turned me against her. That. You've always been jealous. But I noticed her leaving an extra blanket folded at the end of the couch one evening, and she started making chamomile tea without asking. Small gestures, but they landed quietly in my chest like warmth I didn't know I still needed. By the end of that week, I had put together a folder. I labeled it Materials, Eleanor K. It had copies of the letters, scans of the notebook, and photos of the scratched-out family pictures. I didn't know exactly what I planned to do with it yet, but organizing it helped me feel like I had something that couldn't be taken away again. My truth, visible, legible, undeniable. I printed 2 copies. One I kept in my bag. The other, I sealed in a manila envelope and put it in the back of Mrs. Connolly's hall closet, just in case. On Sunday morning, Michael texted, "Can I come by today?" I found something else. I told him to meet me at the church down the street. I didn't want him coming into Mrs. Connolly's house. I didn't want her caught up in any of this, even by proximity. We met in the side parking lot, under the big oak tree that had lost half its leaves already. He got out of his truck and handed me a smaller box, shoebox-sized, taped shut. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just leaned against the truck and looked down at the asphalt. Letters from Aunt Diane, and a few from Dad's cousin up in Rochester. They talk about Mom, not just you. He glanced at me, then looked away again. One of them. She said Mom used to accuse her husband of watching her through the walls. In the 70s. Said she used to scream at the neighbors through the fence. I didn't know any of this. I wasn't born yet. I opened the box on the spot. The letters were neatly stacked. Some were tied with a faded blue ribbon. The handwriting was slanted, difficult to read. One of them began, "Dear Bill, I'm worried about your wife. I've tried to be gentle, but her behavior is escalating. She slapped Eleanor across the face during dinner last week, then blamed her for the roast burning." I folded the letter and put it back. "Why didn't anyone do anything?" I asked. Mostly to myself. Michael rubbed his eyes. Maybe they didn't know what to do. Or maybe it was easier to pretend she was just strict. That word again. Strict. That's what they always said about her. As if strict explained the surveillance, the gaslighting, the isolation. I think Dad tried, Michael said finally. But he was tired. And she wore him down. You know how she gets. I nodded. I knew. He paused, then added quietly, I think I used to believe her. About you. That you were fragile. Overreacting. Always sick. But now I feel like I watched someone drown while I held a rope in my hand and did nothing. I didn't know what to say. I didn't have a response for that. So I said the only thing that came to mind. You're here now. He nodded. We stood there for a while. The breeze picked up and carried the sound of Sunday bells from the church. Before we parted, he handed me a photograph. It was a black and white print from the late 80s, a family photo. Me, Michael, our mother, and father. I remembered the day. It had been taken in front of the fireplace at Christmas. I was 28. What I didn't remember was the way the photo had been altered. Someone had taken a pen and scratched a thin black line across my eyes. I stared at it. She kept this in her room, Michael said, taped to the back of her closet door. The line wasn't heavy. It wasn't messy. It was clean, precise, almost surgical. I tucked the photo into my folder. That night, I didn't sleep much. My joints hurt. My neck was stiff, but it wasn't the pain that kept me up. It was the realization that I had never been sick enough to be taken seriously, only sick enough to be hated. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to accept that anymore. I didn't go outside the next day. My legs were stiff, my fingers swollen, and my head was pounding in that low, deep way it does when my body decides to turn against me for no particular reason. But it wasn't just the physical pain that kept me inside. I needed space. Not from Michael, he had been nothing but decent, but from the weight of everything I now knew. The box, the notebooks, the photos, the things my mother wrote in secret, the fact that, for decades, I had questioned myself because she insisted on rewriting. Reality and everyone else went along with it. She's convinced it's all in her head. Doctor said lupus. Martha says drama. I felt my stomach twist. I hadn't read those words in years. Not since my early 20s, when I'd first been diagnosed and told my family, only for them to ignore it completely. Back then, doctors didn't take women's pain seriously. And my mother, she never took me seriously. She tried to have me committed, I said slowly, lifting a folded letter from the bottom of the box. This is the paperwork from when she told that clinic I was a danger to myself. I was 19. I'd just fainted in the kitchen. She told them I was unstable. They believed her. Michael nodded. I saw that. That's when I decided to bring this to you. He looked down at his hands. I didn't want to believe it, you know? I told myself maybe she was just strict or scared, but she's not scared. She's cruel. I sat back in the chair. My body hurt. My chest ached. But something inside me had shifted. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was the crazy one, or the weak one, or the liar. She's been telling people I made everything up. Even now, after everything, I don't think she even knows what's real anymore. Michael didn't argue. He just said, I'm sorry I didn't do more sooner. You're doing it now, I said. We sat there for a long time. I read a few more letters, saw a few old photos where my face had been scratched out with pen. One of them, Christmas 1978, was torn right where my face used to be. The tape marks were still visible. I'd been erased from the family memory. And now, in this box, I was being brought back. I'm going to organize this, I told Michael. Scan it. Record it. All of it. You should, he said. It's your story, not hers. I nodded, finally understanding that he was right. I had been silent for too long, and silence is what allowed her to tell the story the way she wanted, not anymore. I spent the next few days going through that box one item at a time. I wasn't in a rush. My body wouldn't have let me even if I wanted to. The fatigue was bad that week, worse than usual, but I sat in the small bedroom that Mrs. Connolly had given me, a space no bigger than a closet, with the box open on the floor and I just started. There were letters from my father, handwritten in his tight, controlled script. Some were addressed to my mother. Others had no envelope at all, just folded sheets of lined paper. One stood out, dated February 1981, about 6 months before my first collapse. It said, "Martha, you can't keep telling Eleanor she's imagining it. The doctor said she needs rest. He mentioned autoimmune concerns. Please, just give her some space." That letter had been folded, then folded again, then shoved behind an old newspaper clipping about a church picnic, like it was something to hide. I stared at it for a long time. I'd always wondered if my father had believed me. I never knew. He never said. When he died in 2013, we weren't speaking. Not because of a fight, but because there had never been a space for just the two of us to talk. Everything had always gone through my mother. Now I knew. At least a part of him had known something was wrong. There were other notes. Dozens of them. Scraps of paper with accusations written in my mother's handwriting. Eleanor fakes dizziness to get out of chores. She wants attention. She's jealous of the others. These weren't things she'd written in anger during a fight. They were things she wrote in a spiral notebook labeled Daily Observations. She had a notebook about me. Michael told me he found 3 of them. Only one was in the box. He said the others had been damaged by water in the attic, but even this one, this single, moldy, warped notebook was enough. Enough to prove she had been documenting my every move like I was a science project or a threat. One entry read, "She said she couldn't feel her hands again. This is the 3rd time this week. How convenient. She knows that makes it impossible to do dishes." Another, "I caught her crying in the bathroom again. Such theatrics. It wasn't just cruel, it was obsessive, and I had spent most of my life thinking I was the unstable one." I didn't talk to Michael for a few days after that. I needed time to process. He didn't push. He sent one message 2 days later. "Let me know when you want to talk. I'm here." I didn't reply, but I appreciated it. Mrs. Connolly stayed out of my way. She wasn't the type to pry.